I kind of begrudgingly respect just the dedication to not getting better at what you do for a living. Just coast through life.
It probably shouldn't even happen.
If you got it, you got to flaunt it, Acid.
You know what? I got a lot of stuff that I don't want to flaunt, so I just keep it to myself.
Jeremy is really big into the used mattresses. That's an excellent deal.
He has a used mattress store on the side.
I'm not going to pull the pants down without the pants down cue.
And we found out that Anthony's friends are all 13-year-old boys. Nice.
Clay, how you doing?
Doing a little more poorly after that terrible introduction. I was just fine, to be honest with you.
Hello, Sci-Fi Gangsters. This is the show where we talk about science fiction, video games, and comic book, but really it's just an excuse for me to catch up with my friends and to meet interesting people. I'm Anthony Dennar, media scholar and person who loves murderous children's games, right? Just can't get enough. Can't get enough of those. So that is the topic for today. We're talking about Squid Game. And we're actually revisiting Squid Game because we already did have a Squid Game themed episode before. We talked a good bit about Squid Game, but I wanted to come back to it, right? Because Squid Game, it was hot for a long time. And of course, I have other reasons for bringing up Squid Game again, and that's the fantastic guest that we have here today. But that is our topic for today, talking a little bit about Squid Game, kind of revisiting that topic. But of course, you can always check us out on YouTube and Twitch. We're streaming live on that Sci-Fi Gangsters. And you can also check us out on a podcast form by checking us out wherever you get your podcasts. And once again, on Spotify, it's a video format. So protest Joe Rogan by listening to our Spotify episode or episodes. Definitely check that. Once again, wherever you get your podcasts, you can check us out. And of course, SciFiGangsters.com is our website, a website that I have not updated in a really long time. So I need to go back. I need to go through it. There's a lot. I need to kind of get back into that. But yeah, so once again, we're talking Squid Game today. We have some great guests here. So let me go ahead and introduce our special guest. Up first, in no particular order, Dr. Matt Knutson, an assistant professor at the University of Central Oklahoma. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me tonight.
It's fantastic to have you on. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about, how we met each other and why we decided to do a Squid Game, revisiting Squid Game. But our next guest here, also very excited to have you on, is Dr. Dongjung Lee, who is a lecturer at Shangwon National University. Good to have you on. Lee, how you doing?
Hello, how are you? Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And the reason why I have both of you on here is because I'm also the managing editor of In Media Res, a Media Commons website where we sort of publish academic articles. And we did a special theme week on Squid Game. So so both of you wrote an article, a piece on Squid Game. I also wrote one as well. So you can always check that out if you want to, in Media Res. But yeah, so kind of wanted to have you on to sort of talk about Squid Game again. I'm excited to talk about the show. But let's get to my co-host, Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm good. I think I've watched more TV in the last 3 days than I have in probably the last 6 months combined. Yeah, it was an interesting experience watching binging Squid Game, I guess.
Yeah, I definitely gave you a homework assignment. I was like, hey, on Monday, I'm going to have some people on. You need to watch Squid Game. So you've been, and of course, our last episode that we had was on the Book of Boba Fett. So talking a lot of TV, right? So good to have you here, Jeremy. And then, of course, the producer of the show. This show could quite literally not happen because I don't know how to do it without Acid. Acid, how you doing?
I'm good. How's it feeling over there? Have you been lifting to level up?
I have been lifting a little bit.
That's what
I mean. If we're gonna get off, look, if we're gonna get off on a lifting, if we're gonna get off on a weight training tangent, I did do a little bit of clean work today, right? So, and then I did a little bit of sled push as well. It was good, good for the legs.
Yeah, there's not even any snow around here, but you're sled pushing nonetheless. Okay.
Sled pushing, sled pulling with no snow.
No snow.
But yeah, these are the kind of topics that people want to hear when we're talking about Squid Game. Is what was your workout that morning?
That's right.
All right, so definitely we're going to talk about Squid Game here in a second. But first, we always start the show by warming up, by kind of sharing what's new, and I want to go ahead and get to our guests first. So we'll go ahead and start off with Matt. Matt, what's new? Anything you want to talk about?
So Pokemon Legends Arceus came out
Nice.
about a week and a half ago, and I'm a unapologetic longtime Pokemon fan, and have been playing that, and I play on the couch with my kids. And if you're familiar with Pokemon, one of the draws of it is shiny Pokemon, that there's a 1 in 4,096 chance that a given Pokemon will be shiny, and there's a group of content creators who are constantly shiny hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm at the point in the game where that's mostly what I'm doing, and as such I'm boring my kids that they no longer want to watch me shiny hunt. There's a paper in this somewhere. I think there's some links between mining RNG for a shiny versus like some of the concepts of cryptocurrency, and then also like speed running as something that like you're doing it over and over again until you get the perfect thing. Anyway, that's what I've been playing recently.
Nice.
Yeah, and were you always one of those where you started on the Game Boy? You did Pokemon on the Game Boy and
Yes.
worked your way up?
Yes. Yeah. Every main series game except for second generation, I played when it came out.
Well, fantastic. Definitely a big Pokemon. I think Pokemon Go was the only Pokemon game that I played, and I played it for about a month and quickly realized I can't keep up. Like I'm not doing everything necessary to be even able to compete with anybody in Pokemon Go, which is funny because at the time I was a firefighter at the time when it was really big, and one of the gyms, so to speak, was at the fire station. So I could just be there at the fire station kind of leveling up, and even that, I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep up, but the Pokemon Go was fun for a bit there. Excellent. Well, definitely good to have you here, Matt. Let's move on to Lee. Lee, what's new with you?
These days is quite interesting stage, because as after Squid Game there was like Korean dramas on Netflix, which one was like Hellbound, and now the top number one is All of Us Are Dead. It's like a Korean zombie drama. So not only as a researcher, but some kind of policy advisor, like government officers are really keen on what's the the phenomenon of these K-drama things, on a global media. So I'm now just enjoying watching all the TV series and also studying, doing some jobs. Yeah, I'm busy.
Okay.
Yeah, excellent. I think you've described my life as a graduate student, a PhD candidate. I watch a lot of TV, I play a lot of video games, and I do a lot of reading and writing and editing. I sent another edit to my advisor the other day, and I'm looking forward to the feedback on my prospectus. But excellent, fantastic. So we'll go ahead and move on to Jeremy. What's new with you?
Well, since we had a show about 60 hours ago, not a whole lot has changed. So tonight, my weekly D&D game is normally Sunday nights, but it got moved to Monday. So I did get about an hour and a half, 2 hours in with the D&D crew. Won a nice little fight, so that was fun. It was a good start to the night.
Very good.
Well, fantastic. And Jeremy's enjoying his D&D, and he's enjoying all the homework assignments that I've been giving him with the TV shows. I'm very interested to hear what you thought of Squid Game, because I really did enjoy the series, but we'll get into that here in a second. We'll go ahead and move on to our producer, Acidtrain. Acid, what's new? I haven't spoken to you in a long time, and when I say a long time, I mean last night when we were haloing it up.
Well, I didn't Halo last night. You did. I did not.
Oh, that's right. You weren't playing last night. I'm sorry.
I was not playing last night.
It was 2 nights ago that you were on.
Sunday is my family time day. Yeah, not a whole lot. I went to work today. That was about it. Drove that bus twice, and made made it back safely. So there we go. Nothing too crazy. I did rewatch Squid Game, the whole thing this week. So I'm ready to go.
And once again, a quick little rehash. The wheels on the bus. What do they do again?
I think Jeremy should tell you.
They go round and round, right?
That's what I've heard.
The wheels of the road, they go round and round. Of course, you know, the windows on the bus go up and down, right? No, they go open and shut. There you go.
You leave them open now because of COVID.
It's true, right? It's a lot safer.
Yeah, it's a lot safer now. Get that air flowing.
Excellent. That was a joke that I haven't told in a long time. It was retired. I brought it back. I brought it back just for a special
occasion. He couldn't do the memes tonight, Jeremy. That's why I did that, because he couldn't do the memes.
And you know, last time obviously I talked about the active shooter at my kid's school, which was a very serious situation last time. But luckily that was kind of an isolated incident outside. It was between two dads, so thankfully there was nothing involving the kids, but still kind of a scary situation. So I'll go ahead and go a little lighthearted this time. Acid, you weren't there. I forgot. You weren't able to join the crew. You're usually part of the crew, right? There's a squad of 4 of us playing on Halo, and you weren't part of it. But had a good Halo night last night. We played pretty well. I played pretty well, which is typically not the case when it comes to video games, because I love video games, but I'm not very good at them. So we had a good Halo night. Enjoyed driving the vehicles around while someone's on the turret. That's always fun, right? That's always a good time when you actually you're taking people out on that. So yeah, very good. So and obviously, you know, I'm excited about the the video game studies class that I'm teaching at Georgia State is a whole lot of fun. I think really that particular class, and I don't know if it's because it's a senior seminar or what, it's probably been one of the more rewarding experiences as being a teacher. I've been teaching for quite a 4 or 5 years. But just being that particular class, for whatever reason, whether it's because it's a senior seminar, or it's because we're talking about video games, or it's just because it's me, and I bring out the best, whatever it is. It's a great class. It's a phenomenal class. They're 100% on board with what I bring to the table. Like they're in on it. They're like, okay, this guy is silly, goofy. We're on board, which is not always the case when it comes to classes. So that was a whole lot of fun. It's definitely kind of a rewarding experience. But there you go, though. So we're all caught up. So let's go ahead and get to the topic for today. We're talking Squid Game. We're revisiting Squid Game. It's been how long since the show originally came out? A couple of months, 3 months, or has it been longer than that? Time doesn't really matter anymore now.
I thought it was more like a year, but
has it really been that long? Has it really?
I don't know if it's been that long.
I don't know. I just feel like I've been hearing about it for a long time, and I had no idea what everybody's talking about.
Yeah, but we're gonna talk about Squid Game here, and we'll take turns revolving around here. So we'll go ahead and start off with Matt. What's one thing that you want to talk about when it comes to Squid Game?
Well, so when you, as you mentioned, the Dongjoon and I are contributed to this collection that you did on in media res, and I was excited when that call came out to submit some flash scholarship to this. And I think you and I were thinking along similar lines with some of the ludic elements of Squid Game and the concept of fairness that the front man speaks directly to most clearly partway through this series. That so much of the discourse around this this streaming series has been about its critique of capitalism and the justification that the sense of neoliberalism and meritocracy that you bring up in your essay, and the justification that the front man brings up in this scene is about how out there in the real world, so to speak, the game is fixed. There's no we don't have a truly meritocratic experience in terms of our attempt to succeed, to flourish, attempts toward upward mobility. But within the confines of the game, within here, within these walls, we can have real meritocracy. And your essay picks that apart and says this is really illusory meritocracy. It's not really achieved even within the game. And my essay is about how his logic, his justification is as if it comes straight out of game studies scholarship, as if it comes straight out of Mackenzie Wark's gamer theory, that what's seductive about digital games and games of all kind is that we can achieve meritocracy, we can achieve high scores, that we can achieve this kind of satisfaction that we don't get in the real world. And there's just a lot to examine here about whether it's true of the Squid Game itself and how well it applies to the real world. And that's what I wanted to start with.
Yeah, fantastic. And your article, you brought up Mackenzie Works, gamer theory. That's the very first readings that I assign my students in my video game studies class. Like that's kind of like a great introduction, and perhaps we could pick that argument apart, but I still love it because it's a great starting point in terms of sort of describing, the game space as it's referred to in gamer theory, as the game space being the real world, and how the real world in many ways is very similar to a video game in terms of the constructs and in terms of the superstructure that we all live in and the rules that we all abide in, and how oftentimes it's portrayed as this space where, if you're successful, if you're hardworking, if you're you can accomplish anything, and it's a fair, even playing ground for everybody. And those who are successful are the ones, I'm sort of describing meritocracy now. Those who are successful are the ones that are deserving to be successful. And, obviously that's not necessarily the case. There's people if we're going to use the video game metaphor here, we all begin at different levels. Like we all begin at different levels, and sort of we're all competing at different levels here, depending on the social construction or whatever, wherever you were born and that sort of thing. So I think it's a great, I think it's fantastic you brought that up, because Squid Game in many ways is a great way of connecting conversations about gamer theory and the superstructure, and having sort of like this film or this TV show that kind of helps students. I always like writing about like ways to help students understand some of these more complex subjects in game studies and academia. So in order to like look at Squid Game as a case study in describing those theories, and the fact that you brought up gamer theory, I thought was fantastic, because that's a great way of describing. And you also bring up a great, excellent point where, and Mackenzie Work says this, is that video games in many ways are appealing to us because they often seem far more, they fulfill the promise that the real world continually lets us down on. In terms of, if I play the video game long enough, I will become successful at one point. Like if I grind through World of Warcraft enough, my character will become a high level character. There's nothing really, obviously you could talk about, your abilities and that sort of thing. But like in terms of the game, like if I play hard enough and if I dedicate myself to the game, I will become successful. And that in itself is far more appealing than the real world, right? It's a promise. The video game fulfills a promise that the real world doesn't. And that's kind of what Mackenzie Works is talking about in terms of why video games often are very appealing.
So is it, I'm going to ask a freshman level question here. So is it that the real world doesn't fulfill that, or it's just much easier to get the fulfillment from the video game?
Go ahead.
I would say that the video game is itself easier. And I wouldn't say that I'll take myself for instance. I play video games a lot. Okay. Now I love my family. I have my family time. We have all of that stuff and I love my life. I think it's amazing. But video games bring something to the table that just doesn't exist out there. It's a fantasy escape, and so I don't have to work very hard for it. I can pay $59.99 and enjoy a very good long experience if I want to, depending on if the game's good or not. But yeah, I would say, to answer that question, I would just say that the game itself is just it's an easy escape of entertainment, and it's for me anyway. I think it's very fulfilling in its own right.
Matt, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Adam's saying, that the games provide us opportunities for fantasy and role play and escape from real life, even if it's a life that we love very much, and it's an opportunity to do something different, to embrace like powers that you wouldn't otherwise have, or embrace identities that you don't otherwise have access to. With respect to the relationship between the video game and the context in which video games come to become popular, as Work's argument goes, that there are like eras of communication that in topographical times we have like film noir. And in our current moment, which Work describes as topological, the medium that that best expresses our relationship to the real is the video game. And what Work argues here is that in this in this economic and social context in which upward mobility is illusory and economic flourishing is really only for the very elite, games enable us to flourish and to find satisfaction that we don't get in the real world, which again Work calls game space.
Yeah, so if the promise of the real world, the game space, if the promise of the real world, let's just look at American culture, American capitalism. If the promise of American capitalism is, if you work hard enough, if you're talented, if you dedicate yourself long enough to a particular organization, particular job, and you become an expert in that particular field, then you will rise up the chain, the social hierarchy, right? You'll continue all the way up. If you're not up here, then it's because you did something wrong along the way, right? So that's the promise. And oftentimes we can sort of point to the ways in the real world where that's kind of BS. Like there's so many other factors that contribute to your moving up the chain. Video games, on the other hand, right? Like World of Warcraft. Obviously, I have to be able to afford to buy the game, of course, and there's ways of, paying to play, right? To get to, so there's other ways of sort of cheating the meritocracy that even the game promises, right? And we'll talk about that. But if I play World of Warcraft long enough, I will climb all the way to the top, and I will, become like this uber powerful warrior on World of Warcraft. So it's sort of fulfilling the promise that the real world continually falls short. And so in that particular example that I gave. So yeah, a little fun. That is a fun freshman like little discussion going on here. But yeah, excellent. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to Lee. Lee, what would you like to talk about?
Maybe I will. It's slightly connected with the Matt has talked about. But it's from the perspective of like the Korean as a Korean researcher. Oh, you're talking about like the American capitalism and then some gamification theories. To be honest, I'm not an expert in these theories, but it's becoming very global standard. That is one interesting thing, because Squid Game, by applying these Americanized ideas about capitalism, neoliberalism, has actually been one of the key point why the global audience were like interested in the daylight. But at the same time, in what happened in Korea was quite different, because when it released the first time, there were more critics about why because it's like a violent environment of the game gamification, and it wasn't very normal for Korean dramas to adopt these ideas, especially this idea of like the meritocracy, and then like killing each other, and the one last standing survivor in the like narrative. And then but later I think the reason why it became so popular was because director Hwang had this idea, but it's not been like released for over 10 years because of the cultural pressure, and then some other investment problems as well. But the phenomenon that the modern movies adopting this idea of meritocracy, like this idea of like the game scenarios, has been quite interesting, because and also the as Anthony said, like the American capitalism as becoming like one of the like common skills of making like the movies and videos, and then the more and more people are just accepting natural as a natural narrative is quite one of the phenomena that I'm quite finding interesting, because it hasn't been very common, like the scenarios that like all the participants appeared and killing each other, one side survivor, like a survivor at the last. It wasn't like the common scenarios that we used to find. And also this genre of the death game, the rise of the death game, was quite interesting. But as I said in my previous writings, how conceptualizing the games in the Squid Game was quite different, because of they were surviving not to survive. They were like participating the game with their own like wills, and they are killing each other not to survive but to earn the prize. It is maybe more gamification the features of the recent like media contents, I think.
Yeah, fantastic points there. One thing that I've been sort of interested in hearing about, in terms of, obviously when we look at Squid Game, it's not an American show, but oftentimes us as Americans, we use our own lens when we analyze we analyze it through the American lens, in particular American capitalism. And one thing that perhaps gets overlooked is, sort of like, South Korean culture in particular, like how it actually says something about South Korean culture. Because obviously the one thing that comes to my mind when I watch Squid Game through my American lens is like American capitalistic's influence on South Korean culture, and how sort of like in many ways, and kind of the same thing when it comes to like films like Parasite, how like the American capitalism is sort of like tarnishing South Korean culture, and sort of like that critique. But one thing that I find interesting is, what are some unique ways that we can look at it through South Korean culture in particular?
The biggest like a point that I can share is because American like capitalism and neoliberal ideas has brought in Korean culture in a very short time, with the with the like a short period of like economic development. So we didn't, as a Korean, I think we didn't really have the time to accept these ideas, and these didn't really have time to apply this idea in a proper way, maybe if there is a proper way. So if you watch the Parasite, there was like a obvious that there's like lines in between the upper class and the lower class as in constructions, and then the urban planning or like the structure of the buildings. There was quite clear lines in between the neighbors where the rich people live, where the poor people has to go, and then maybe it is related to the gentrification problems as well. So even if there is a problem with the classifying the rich or the poor, but there is more actual problems in you can feel that you are in a poor area. It's the same in America in some part of the cities, but because America is big, there is a different cultures in different cities, different settings. So maybe there are some people who are living in a socially or like financially poor areas, but not really feel the differences or the pressure. And also when it comes to the Squid Game, there's a bunch of like different people who has different jobs, but they are all in the same criteria. So when we used to think about the Marx theories about the poor, there's some kind of stereotypes where what kind of jobs you have, what kind of cities you live. But nowadays it's a mixture. Even if you are having a good job and went to the one of the big universities like Sangwoo did, you still can end up in a group of poor people. So I think that this mixture and complex situation is in a social standard or in a cultural background actually making very complex to understand what's wrong with this, maybe if there is a neoliberal if it is American capitalism in a Asian countries or some countries like Korea who has been developed in a short while.
Yeah, fantastic. Excellent points there. Really good. All right, so we'll go ahead and move on to Jeremy. And Jeremy, yours doesn't have to be academic. You can just say,
follow.
I liked it, I didn't like it. But yeah, go ahead.
All right, yeah. So my critique will be entirely superficial and vapid. So when it the first 10 minutes or so, I thought I was going to absolutely hate the show. But then in retrospect, I think it's on average, I think it's better than it's not. So I still have a lot of questions, the capitalist in me anyway is thinking, how did these people get enough credit to get into this much debt? So that was one that kept the financier I get. The rest of them, who lent you that much money? But so that the way the whole story played out. But I will say the thing that stuck with me the most was the aesthetics of the whole thing. I thought it was shot very well. I thought the framing, the lighting, the coloring, the sound, I thought that was impeccable. There was a quality to it that you don't see with that kind of consistency or in that kind of show very much.
Excellent. So it seems like you're leaning towards, I didn't get your review of the show yet, but it seems like you're leaning towards liking it a little bit. Excellent. So good.
Yeah. So I still have issues with most of the characters. I did I liked the old man ended up being the boss of the whole thing. When they first brought in the VIPs, I thought it was just going to be another, rich people playing with toys. I'm kind of glad that it ended up being, there is this guy who's just kind of evil, and this is his kingdom that he plays with people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the VIP thing, it's a little too on the nose for me in a lot of ways, but I totally get it. Like it's like I totally understand the necessary for that. But yeah, because like, why would you have the game? Like, how could you physically have the game? Because that's the question that I'm continually asking the first several episodes is what's the purpose of this? Who's benefiting from this? Is someone profiting off of it? If they are, how are they profiting off of it? So this sort of explains where they're getting some of this money. So it's almost necessary because without the VIPs, none of it makes sense. Like the feasibility of it doesn't make any sense. And Jeremy, I think I'm kind of on the same board with the same page with you when it comes to not really liking the dubbing, the acting of the dubbing at all. And I've heard, once again, I haven't watched it without the dubbing and just subtitles, but I've heard that it's so much better with the subtitles than it is because some of the Matt, I feel like you want to say something.
Yeah, I'll vouch for the subtitles, and it's when the VIPs come in that it's like, wow, these are terrible. Like the performances of the VIPs. Like clearly, here's some expatriates that they brought in to like film these VIP roles, who are, I don't want to kick them too hard, but there is a disparity. There's a very mixed level of performances, and I'll vouch for the subtitles.
But weren't the VIPs speaking English?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was the most grating part of the experience.
Because you kind of see their lips match it. I was like, wait a minute, they're not. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I had the subtitles turned on at various points to look at the difference, and I did notice that they were specifically supposed to be American. That the subtitles go away. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. So, and I think as someone who kind of really got into it, like the bad dubbing or the bad acting when it comes to the voice acting, you kind of forget about it. You overlook it. It just becomes part of it. But some of the characters, there's a lot of like, the tone is always off at points. Like they sound happy when they're supposed to be like scared, and they sound scared when they're supposed to be happy. There's a lot of weird stuff happening.
It very much felt to me like a live action anime, like the vocality and the drama and everything. It's pretty much what it felt like with the dubbing.
Lee, I feel like you have to say something.
Yeah, actually, there was a lot of criticism from Korean audience about like a bad subtitle and bad, especially dubbing. I can't even imagine like how dubbing gonna affect your like entertainment or you're watching the Squid Game, because like the characters with their specific as history as an actor or actress actually affect the making the whole character, But it's when it comes to especially to the translation, the subtitle, there was even like one of the scholar matching and then the cultural differences where the subtitle couldn't even possibly conceptualize the cultural uniqueness in Korea. But Netflix, with the Netflix, maybe it is like a start point that there is a problems. So we're gonna make the problems better, and then as Bong Joon-ho said, if you go over 1 inch, there's a lot of like cultural differences. So maybe it's one of the amusement that you can actually find while criticizing. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic, excellent. Asa, we'll go ahead and get to you. As someone who watched the show again, what do you think? What do you want to talk about?
I'm glad I watched it again. I enjoyed it, even the second time through, and just kind of picking up some of the things that I may have missed the first time. I mean, I did. Of course, I was playing games while watching it too, so a lot of stuff going on. I still go back to I would like some more background on the VIPs. Like who they are, where they came from, why do they have all this money. We got a little bit from the host guy at the end, the old guy at the end, but still not enough. I would like to know more about that. So I could see where they could go with like maybe a season 2 as like the background season. I think that would be a nice little change of pace, like, because you already know from start to finish what happens. You've already seen everybody. All right, well, this is how this started. You know, this is how this is why this is going on. But yeah, I mean, I still think that the organ harvesting was a big part of the funding, even though some of them had no idea they were doing it. I think some of the bigwigs knew they were doing it. It just wasn't made clear. Because I mean, why wouldn't you in that situation? You know, why would you not have? Now, I didn't understand why the doctor was one of the participants when they could have just got, you know, a square-headed dude to be a doctor and he'd take care of it. You know, so I'm not really sure why they went that route, but yeah. So I'm kind of hoping for a season 2 of like background season.
Yeah, I've got a question on. So I never could quite 100% figure out if this was the way they were going or not. So the policeman, when he's searching through the ledgers, is that his brother's name that he sees as the winner in 2015? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. So the question would be, like, that's like almost like a Saw thing. Like, why did you win the game and then come back and participate in the game?
Because the guy that won, he ended up dying. Now, did he give all of the money or just like half to the guy's mom and the?
I mean, you assume he kept some because he had a suit and he got
the red hair and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
It kind of, I guess, it kind of comes to the idea of like buying into the ideology of the game, right? So it was an evil playing field and I won. Therefore, I was successful because of what I did.
Does that make you the ultimate evil?
that makes me the new leader because I understand what need like. So it's almost like that. Like it's a little bit of.
And he goes back at the end. He goes back like he's about to board the plane, and he turns around and does not board the plane. Like he's heading.
And we assume that he's going back to destroy the game, but maybe he's not. Maybe he's going back to the game because he wants to be part of it. Stockholm syndrome is the word that I was thinking of. It's a little bit of Stockholm syndrome, and it's a little bit of sort of buying into the idea that the sort of like the topic that I'm going to talk about for my topic, and that is meritocracy. Obviously, we kind of brought this up several times, and I'll kind of quickly hit on this. But one of the fascinating things that I enjoyed about this was the game itself, the Squid Game, was designed to be a fair playing ground, like you said, Matt, in your article, right? That's the whole point of it. Because his logic, the outside the real world is unfair, and there's no way to sort of fix the real world. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up this game, and we're going to make an even playing ground where people from all walks of life, different socioeconomic backgrounds, that sort of thing, can all compete on an even playing ground. But man, is that bullshit. Like, so let me just get into here. Like the game itself, there's so many factors that go completely against the idea of an equal playing ground. So the first thing is, and I'll just bring up one example, the glass bridge. Okay, let's talk about this. If it's supposed to be a fair game, the fact that someone discovered which glass is the hard glass should be part of the game. Like that should, okay, so this person was able to use their intelligence or their experience to determine the safe path. Why would you disrupt the game then? Because what you're doing is you are interfering with the game as the game master. You're changing the game as it goes along. That's not fair. That's not a fair playing ground. So that's one of the things that really was like got to me on that one. And it kind of points to the frailties of the idea of the meritocracy in general. So that's one thing. The other thing is, so you have the organ thing going on, the organs selling on the black market thing going on. So we find out that he knew about this. The game master knew this was going on, but he was completely okay with it because it wasn't disrupting the flow of the game. But it was disrupting the flow of the game because they were probably picking out every doctor, every Squid Game, and giving that doctor hints. So you were influencing the game
But that
by
was
allowing.
the part that made it unfair was when you gave the doctor the information. The harvesting of the organs, he didn't care about it because you can harvest all the organs you want. I was like, I don't care. Just don't say anything else. That's all you can do. Which is why I was confused why they would bring a doctor that is participating in the game, and why not just bring a doctor?
Hire another doctor.
Hire a doctor, or whatever. Just do that.
I didn't think the game master knew about the organ harvesting. I thought that was just a.
He made it seem like he did, right? Because he makes a comment. He says, "I don't care what you guys do with the organs, as long as you're not disrupting the flow of the game." I remember him saying that.
Yeah, because he was like, harvest them, eat them, cook them, whatever. Just don't. Yeah.
So the game master, either he's pretending like he knew or whatever, but let's just say he knew. If he knew that was happening, then you're allowing a disruption, a complete tarnishing of the game itself by allowing this to happen, right? Especially if they're giving hints to whatever doctor's in there, so the doctor will come help them with the organs. So there's two things that are disrupting the flow of the game. Another one is, if you wanted a fair game, why would you allow everyone to kill each other in between games? Like that doesn't seem like unless you're just saying, oh, that's part of the game. No, like if they're resting, let them rest. Allowing everyone to just kill each other seems completely against the game as well. Besides the fact that people because they're cheating as well. Like you have one particular player who refuses to move. Right. At one point, obviously he gets thrown over, but that's only because another player sacrifices themselves. But there's just so many other things that were, if the game master wanted to create a true meritocracy in this game, he's falling short in a lot of ways. Jeremy, I feel like you're about to say something, a rebuttal.
Not a rebuttal. I mean, it's more of how do you create a fair game? Like, I don't see any of these games as being fair in the normal sense of the word. I mean, in any game, someone's going to have an advantage for some reason or another.
And there's going to be hackers, and there's going to be people who have better controller equipment, and there's going to be people who have better technology.
Yeah, I'm just talking like basic kid games. Like, there's going to be someone with more experience. There's going to be someone with some, genetic variation that enables them to be better at something than somebody else. So I don't see how you construct a fair game anyway. You can say the game overall is fair because of the milieu of sub games blends itself to a average of various abilities, but I don't see how you say one individual game can be fair.
Yeah. So a piece of game study scholarship that I bring up in the essay is Kaiwa's Man Play Games, where he talks about games of chance and games of skill. And that for both of them, the foundational concept is that everyone has a fair shot of winning. That whether we're talking about the game of cutting the figure out of the honeycombs or if I'm getting that wrong, or when we're thinking, or if we're thinking about a traditional sport like basketball or soccer, that the playing field is level in that everyone comes in with their own abilities, but whoever performs the best on that day, if we're talking about track, for example, whoever performs the best on that day, that's the fairness of the game. That if we enter a game of chance, such as craps, that the roll of the dice is cosmically fair for all the participants there. But point taken, Jeremy, that you can't give every single contestant exactly a 1 in 456 chance of winning, because everyone brings in their own abilities. And to Anthony's point, like even within some of the games, like yeah, as you rightly point out, like there are moments in between games where like we enter like a free-for-all, both on like the second night or whatever it is, where there's the fight in the dark, as well as the steak knife that's left at on the dinner plate at the end. Like even within these games that are supposed to be fair, or you know, stated as if they're fair, contestants are going to have obvious advantages, and the most notable to me is the tug of war. That like having brawn is a huge advantage here, and the women participants in the Squid Game are disadvantaged here, and you can also see it in the Mr. Beast video that Lee referenced in his writing, that just before Mr. Beast announces the tug of war, there's an opportunity in which contestants can opt out and get like $1,000 or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you see this exodus of women who all know that the next game is the tug of war, and they leave because these games are not as fair as as the front man or in this case like Mr. Beast putting it on might have us believe.
That's a good point.
Lee, did you have something to say? I didn't know if you had anything to say.
I actually always have a bunch of things to say. Actually, that is very interesting. Like all you guys have picked up from the stories, because I think Squid Game is like criticism about a whole bunch of like neoliberalism, like American capitalism or meritocracy, but it comes to one point that actually like mirroring, like reflecting our actual present lives. So like as you said, like a meritocracy is talking about like if you're better, you have to get rewarded better. But it is like a simple and very common social standard has become in our lives. But we are actually questioning if like everyone has in a fair situation to compare each other. So like as Anthony said, the mirror bridge. So it is basically not on a merit, it's basically on a luck. So they are picking some of the people who are like crossing the road first, but obviously you're gonna die. Whatever your skills have, whatever luck you have, you're gonna die. If it is the end of the lines, you're gonna survive. There's a high chance. So like they're criticizing the fantasy of the meritocracy when the idea that people can be fair, people can be like start from the same start lines, and also when they talk about the doctor, so there is always like corruption from the middle who has got the power. So I think the organizer didn't know about this, but there is always corruption in between the class, like getting better opportunity for some of the participants. There's another like criticism about the fantasy of meritocracy. Also, there's like when you talked about the I'm looking at this space as a like a whole point of the show, like in the waiting room. So what's happening in waiting room is very is very interesting, because they are not in a real life, but they are not in a game space. But what's happening? Most people die in there, and most people like actually looking at themselves with the confronting the moral issues, ethical issues. They are like once becoming as a team, but betray each other, and even the knives, something that treated as a like a cheat, like happens all the time. But what's the interesting thing is like they are looking at it and actually they are manipulating the situation. So maybe even if there's like this whole a lot of metaphors, positive metaphors about meritocracy, maybe it's not gonna like possible to really have the fair society. That is, I think, the criticism of the Squid Game.
And I think sort of like the Squid Game itself is a great way of describing how a meritocracy works in terms of, let's just use the bridge as another example, right? So you have someone who is able to find a way to, to outsmart the bridge, right? This person can figure out what glass will not break. And then the game master changes the rules of the game, turns off the light. So in a lot of ways, it's sort of like, you can become successful until they change the rules on you, right? Or you can work hard and you could be the most talented person in your field, but you're a woman in a masculine profession. Like it's sort of like pointing to sort of how this kind of, points to the real world and how we keep using the word meritocracy, right? That's going to be the drinking word of the game. And one more thing before we move on. If you wanted to create a game which was different from the real world, it was a space where it doesn't replicate the frailties of the real world. Why would violence be such an integral part of the game? Yes, because you have to have violence because it kills off the participants, right? Or you could just say you lost, bye. Why does violence have to be, if you wanted to have some, because he does this little preaching moment where he talks about how the world where people are killing each other, people are starving, it's an unfair world, therefore we're going to have a game where we're just going to kill everyone and we're going to allow everybody else to kill each other. So if you wanted to create a game that was different, almost like this utopia game, why would violence and death and deceit and backstabbing be such an integral part of the game? Because that is the real world. Violence, death, corruption, chaos, that's the real world. So why would you create a game that just replicates the real world? To me, it's kind of fascinating how that's such a bit, but I understand why. It's because we like to see people get shot when they're walking when they're playing children's games. That's why. I mean, it's as simple as that.
And so last comment on the bridge, from a pragmatist perspective, if the guy had just, I forget his name, the guy who was second, if he had just waited like 4 seconds and then jumped, he'd have won the game. It'd have been done.
What are you talking about? What do you mean?
So because the girl and the other guy were behind him, right?
Yeah.
So he had to get out of the way. If he had just hung for a few more seconds and jumped,
they wouldn't have made it. And
they wouldn't have made it.
He would have won the game right there. There would have been no final game.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. Or when you're crossing the bridge, jump on the outside where the the brackets are. Why would you jump in the middle of the glass?
Or use your
on the rails.
Use your shoe
just
to try to
spread your legs
glass
out and jump on the rails.
I'm sure they would have just shot you.
Probably.
Yeah. If they're going to turn off the lights, they're definitely going to shoot you if you just run on the rails. But yeah. So we had quite a bit of discussion on each picking one topic here. So we don't really have enough time to get through everybody again. Does anyone want to add one more final thing before we head out of here today?
I did want to make sure that we acknowledged like Madeline Ha-Yoon Hawk's contribution here that I found really illuminating. That is the co-panelist that couldn't be here tonight. In how illuminating it was that she picked apart the translation of red light, green light, and like the multiple resonances that Lee brought up in terms of like what Western audiences are not going to perceive in whether it's the translation of the subtitle or in general what you brought up, Anthony, that Western audiences are going to approach this from a American centric kind of perspective and like going to see this as American neoliberalism played out, but like as Madeline picks it apart, like, oh, the doll that has the cameras for eyes, this is actually a character from a children's workbook that would be very familiar to its audience that the resonances of the translation that references the national flower of Korea, and as well as like this this process of crossing the border as the finish line, that like contestant the third place finisher, I forget, she is outed as North Korean in the process of the narrative, and like this border crossing resonance is something that's going to be largely lost on Western audiences. I just wanted to like acknowledge how illuminating this piece was.
Yeah, fantastic. And of course, all these articles can be found at Media Res, the Media Commons website. We all wrote an article there on the Squid Game. Does anyone else want to say anything before we head out of here?
I do want to say. Go ahead.
We'll go Lee, then we'll go Acid.
Yeah, I actually want to add some like one of the biggest like part of the understanding the show. Actually, we haven't talked, but if there's another time, we can talk about this, like about the flexible labor. So like the reason why a lot of people are sharing this kind of vulnerable like social classes as imminent like problems in the society is because there's like a flexible labors makes you like not have suffer from like insecure that you might in this kind of social group by accident, or if you have a big accident, there's no way to rent the money, or no without the financial fund, maybe you're going to be the next one who get the card and you play the game. So there's a common fear among these people, and actually there's like gig economies maybe in the US, like in independent contract works who doesn't really have the social covers, have the problems. So with the platform like businesses, companies like the Uber, so make this like the change of the labor system also like has a big part of the Squid Game, I think. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, fantastic, excellent. Acid, what'd you have?
No, I was just going to say, I'm just going to go ahead and throw this out as a prediction. There will be an American comedy version of this, maybe wrapped up into like a movie, maybe the Octopus event, or, something to that effect. Because I can just see like Snoopy shooting everybody, during some type of game, I mean, it's sad my mind went there, but just because it's here, why would they not? Look at all the spoofs that they've done over the last 20 years. I mean, from I don't even know. But yeah, there's a comedy in there somewhere in America. That's my prediction.
Is everybody excited about Squid Game season 2? Do we need another Squid Game season? I'm not 100% sure we do. I feel like it's sort of, obviously there's some loose ends. The cop who gets shot, obviously we kind of want to know what happens to him. But will the same appeal still?
I want a prequel. That's what I want.
You want a prequel?
I want a
Excellent.
prequel. I want a prequel to this.
Jeremy, has somebody
realistic. It's much realistic to brought those like the different stories of different characters into like the season 2, then making like a whole like setting of like a BI fees and the money transactions or other things.
The other day, my son was playing Roblox, and he was playing the Squid Game, where you get the red light, green light game. I was like, should my 7-year-old be playing this? I don't know, but yeah, Roblox has like Squid Game inspired little challenges that you can do. So the other day he was like, I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm playing Squid Game. I was like, you're doing what? So he was kind of enjoying that. Jeremy, are you looking forward to his second season?
I don't know. It kind of depends on the premise. We'll see. So, like I said, I never really liked any of the characters a lot. Seemed like the guy was kind of the same after the entire ordeal. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, it depends on if you tell me, hey, you have a week to watch this entire series. We'll determine whether I watched it or not.
That's right.
That's the way this. Yeah, that's
That's
the
how we
way this
roll.
show goes. I give you guys homework assignments, and then we get it going.
I still haven't finished Boba Fett. I'm still
Don't watch
working on
Boba
it.
Fett?
Still working
All
on
right,
that one.
well, maybe one day you'll kind of get on
I'll
that.
figure it out.
But that is going to conclude our show here today. I don't like to go too much over an hour. That's not true. Usually we do. I've been trying to shorten the episodes
Liar.
down. It's
Yeah.
late for a lot of people. Lee, I know it's super late for you. I totally forgot about that. It's super late for you. And thank you so much. What time is it over there?
It's almost midnight. No. Almost noon.
Okay, fantastic. And you stayed for this, right? It was fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. And then Matt, thank you so much for being here as well.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, nice
It was, a,
meeting
whole- it
y'all.
was a blast. Yeah. And Acid, of course, producer of the show. Good to have you. Jeremy, a good friend of mine and co-host of this series as well. A couple of reminders. We're broadcasting live on YouTube and Spotify. You can check out and Spotify as well, but also on Twitch. So whatever form you like to listen to us, you can always check us out at SciFiGangsters.com. But that's the show. Thank you everyone for being here. Goodbye, everybody.